Hello and welcome to Sport Quotes and Facts Untold. Today I'm delighted to be joined by former Nottingham Forest and Plymouth Argyle striker Paul McGregor, who while playing in the Premier League was also in a band and appeared in Enemy. Paul, your handle on Twitter is the Britpop Footballer, and I'm guessing that being a professional player and musician in the 90s must have been, pretty special.
It was something, yeah. Thank you for not mentioning Northampton Town in my career as well. I appreciate that. They were dark days, and we don't talk about that club around me. So yeah, Nottingham Forest, Plymouth. I was on loan at Carlisle. Had a wonderful time at that club. What a great club that is! And I went to Preston as well under David Moyes for a short period as cover when they were going up with that great team of Sean Gregan and Johnny Macken and all that lot. The hell of a side. So yeah, fast forward into the 90s. It was quite something. I think my handle on social media is somewhat tongue in cheek, of course. At the time, it was kind of fun, sort of having a foot in both camps and traversing both worlds. But when I came away from football, it became all I was known for, really. And so I had to dump it quickly and run away from it as fast as I could. So I hated it for years and years. And then how I came back round to that sort of thing was Matt Ford, the political comedian Matt Ford. He's a big Forest fan. And he asked me to do the official Nottingham Forest podcast called Reservoir Red Dogs with him and host that with him. I ummed and ahed. I've got no will or want to go into any kind of media work, really. I was happy just doing what I was doing. And he was like, no, come on, you'll be great. It'll be brilliant. I was like, I don't really follow football. I don't really follow Forest. I see if they're doing all right, but I don't follow the club. He was like, no. You'll just be there to just sort of have insight into it. He's like, he said, I've got all the enthusiasm. I know what's going on week to week. And he's like, you'll just be that bit of insight that can link us in. And it worked beautifully. So the first episode, I had all my notes and I got everything prepared, and they were out the window straight away. So the second one, I wasn't even looking who was on. I was just turning up then and just having a laugh. And they were great. They were fantastic. And the thing that I really started to enjoy, and it happened at the right time in my life. I'm 48 now. And just how fans remembered me, and in particular that 96 team and that time, and how fans just loved the fact that I was a bit different, and it became this sort of cult hero, this cult figure around the club, and the rock and roll football and all that kind of stuff. And I left football to be in a band, and it's just a different story, isn't it? It's an interesting story, and the fans I'm remembered really fondly. I sort of dipped in and dipped out quite quickly with Forest, but got in, scored 2 bangers, left. So I'm really well remembered and well thought of amongst Forest fans, and it was just lovely hearing the stories back, particularly around COVID as well, when people were telling us we were getting them through it, and they were really looking forward. It was the highlight of their week, and things was wonderful. So after running from football, really, but that persona more than anything, it sort of started to just seep back in, and I got comfortable with it. And I thought, well, what a wonderful thing to have done for people, that they remember a period in their lives and you're synonymous with it and a big part of it. And they remember you fondly and they talk fondly. That's a wonderful thing to have had, right? And so I got really comfortable with it. And again, around the time of COVID, we used to, because I love a pint with my old man, right? My dad's still alive, and I've got mates whose dads aren't still alive. So I go for a pint for all my mates who haven't got their old man still. Anyway, that's the excuse I give my missus. But there's no one in the world I'd rather have a pint with than my dad, and I love him to bits. And we go for a pint once a week, twice a week, maybe. So during COVID, we couldn't. So what I used to walk to my mum and dad's ordinarily with my daughter and my wife, and we'd sit at the top of the steps. They've got this council house of steps that go down, and they'd sit at the bottom. He'd leave the cans halfway on the step, and we'd just sit and we'd have a few beers. But my dad found, he was having a clear out, bored stiff in COVID, and he found a load of my old shirts and training kit and all this sort of stuff. And some of the training kit, mate, is banging, like the sort of stuff that if Liam had found it, like he'd have been like wearing his oversized Umbro stuff and everything. Just so cool. And bizarrely, that like I got sort of sucked back into, and I don't know whether it was sort of, if it was a warm blanket, something cozy in times of unease, but I sort of got sucked back into melody musically, and big bands like the Beatles and the Stones, obviously, and bands that I loved like Big Star and the Beach Boys, and again a lot of the 90s stuff. That all just started to hit me again, and weirdly, you're going to think I'm mad now, but the sort of the Britpop footballer thing started growing on me like a character, a bit like a Bowie character, really, like a Thin White Duke or something. Just this thing, and just thinking about that lad who was 20 years of age with a great haircut, playing Premier League football and being in a band, and just thinking how fearless and how amazing that was. And I can look back at that now and go, and it can seem like another character. I can talk about that guy in the third person. I can feel comfortable with that because it is another person. Sometimes I say to my dad, like if I'm watching the footy with my dad, I'm just like, the confidence I had at that age was insane. Just insane. It seems vulgar now, at my age, at 48 years of age, to think about that confidence. But that's what you've got to have that in the locker as a footballer. Do you know what I mean? And particularly walking out on a stage as well. So this character started to grow, and I've got a studio here in Nottingham that I share with a few friends. It's like commercial standard studio. It's beautiful. We're really lucky to have it. It's in a big grade 2 listed building, an old school. And lads, having been in bands for like 20 odd years, got loads of kit. So we've got like a grand piano in there, got double basses, we've got a vocal booth, we've got mixing desks, 2 live drum setups. It's all the guitars you could want, all the amps you could want. It's amazing. We love it. And we walk in there. We do it every Wednesday and stuff. I just said to one of the guys, I was just chatting to him. He was stood on my step during COVID, red hot, if you can remember. And I was like, mate, I've written about 30 tunes, and they're all just like massive indie bangers. And I'm just in that world at the minute. And he's this rock guy, and he was like, mate, this is like, he's like, he said, Oasis is number 1 for me. Oasis, and like, that's my era. And I was like, oh, do you want to do some stuff? But anyway, a band came of it called The Upper Body. And we just released songs as they come. So we release double A sides as they come. So I think we've released 8 on Spotify and iTunes and all that kind of stuff since. So I love doing all that. But like we film the studio, all the studio sessions. So they're all on YouTube, UBTV it's called. Yep. And we just film them from A to B. You see how crap we are, and you see how good we are, and you see us rehearsing, you see us writing, and it's just completely naked. And it's essentially 4 lads having 4 beers on a Wednesday and cutting loose. 4 lads at our age. And it's one of those things, sort of invite people to just come grab 4 beers and come and watch the lads and hang out in studios, that sort of thing. Because it's our refuge, And within that, like sometimes like that Britpop footballer character's there, it's the maddest thing. So I'll sometimes wear my boots, I wear my moldies in the studio and wear shorts or wear a nose strip and or one of my old shirts with like some like 1950s zoot suit trousers. So just, do you know what I mean? I'm running with this character.
Yeah.
And I've never done social media before. I've never been interested in it. I don't like it. Not interested in the slightest. And I'm wary of it now. The amount of times I go to Twitter to type something, I go, no, you're publishing stuff, mate. Like, just stick to what you're doing. People don't need to hear your opinions on stuff. It's like there's too much of that crap about.
Yep.
And it doesn't interest me. So I thought, well, I'm 48. I'm dead in a minute. Like, we're dead in 10 minutes. So I'm going to be who everyone thinks I am. And I'm going to go and hit this character. So all the socials are the Britpop Footballer. The podcast is the Britpop Footballer. The character that fronts the band is the Britpop Footballer. It's essentially a bizarre version of that 90s me. I wear moldies to perform and I put shinnies on and stuff. Like, do you know what I mean? I've gone into this mad little world and created this little character. And And that's how the I've digressed slightly,
No,
but that's how kind of the whole Britpop footballer thing came about, and that's the sort of brand I'm pushing with that now. And I'm thinking of taking that out and doing some after dinner stuff and some stand-up stuff with it as well, and just really going to town on the character and pushing it and playing some songs with it and talking about my career. And
because I think
I'm having fun with it.
Yeah, I think with football and music, there is a crossover. And as I said, Paul, when I first reached out to you, I still remember the Merlin Sticker album. And even there, I mean, obviously, we're from the same part of the world, so that's what first struck me. But as you said, Premier League footballer with the cool hairstyle, you fit the part, and that's what interested me in you. I didn't look at your like career games or goals on the sticker. I just thought,
no one does.
He is really cool, and I think that's especially in modern football as well. And I think that's why it's great you're going back to that, character. There aren't any people like that in football anymore.
Yeah, it's getting drilled out the game, isn't it? And by the way, look at the standard of football, in the Premier League. It's absolutely insane. So, rightly so, you don't want if you're a manager of a Premier League club, the last thing you want is a kid who's also in a band and getting pissed every week and going to gigs and living that life. That's the last thing you want. You want kids that are looking after themselves really and being proper professionals. So I get it, but yeah, the characters do get drilled out the game somewhat. I remember going to see Mark Crossley he was running I think Barnsley under 21s. And they've got this big bank, and I went and sat on the bank and he saw me and he came over and he was watching. And he sat there and he was like, Macca, look at them. He was like, they're all 6'4", 6'5", built like brick shithouses. None of them can play. He's like, we get given the athlete now and get told to make the footballer. And obviously you get anomalies and you get a bit of a crossover with that, but clubs would rather have someone who's 6'4", stacked, and then here's what you're doing. We're going to stick the ball into that corner and you're going to get on the end of that, or and it's unfortunate, fingers crossed we don't miss Gaza and we don't miss the next Messi. Exactly. We don't miss these sorts of people, fingers crossed. But like I say, the standard's just insane. Like I barely recognize the game now, and a lot of that's physicality, really.
Yeah, they are athletes, as you say. It's almost robotic, isn't it?
It can be. But then when you see somebody, I mean, I'll never forget. Like, obviously, I'm a Liverpool. You're an Everton fan, right?
Yeah,
my dad's a blue. My dad's a blue, and but I grew up in. Obviously, I'm older than you, so I grew up a bit earlier. So when Liverpool were winning everything, my mum's side of red, my dad's side of blue. So I was always going to support Liverpool. But yeah, when I went to see, I think it was an FA Cup game or a friendly game, but I went to see Liverpool play at Pride Park, and like most people, I didn't think much to Jordan Henderson. Didn't think he was particularly anything, neither here nor there. When I watched him live, oh my God, I was just like, when anyone talks to me now about Hendo and he's average or he's this, I'm just like, oh my God, please go and watch this guy play football live. He is a joy to behold. How he glides across a field and looks, his presence, like he's massive, Hendo. He's a really big guy. And like the presence in the middle of that park, I was just staggered. He'd take 3 or 4 steps and he's covered 30, 40 yards. Like it's just insane. So when you see players who are that height and are like, we used to get told not to go in the gym in case it slowed me down. Mm-hmm. Like you don't want to put loads of muscle on because it'll slow you down. Like you look at people like Traore or whoever, like the lads who are proper fast. And look at a sprinter, for example, 100-meter sprinter. They've got muscle on muscle. So it's bizarre. So when I see now lads, particularly live, like going in and out of people and turning on a sixpence and like step overs and all kinds of amazing footwork, and just to think the center of gravity is all the way up there and how much weight they're carrying now and how much faster they're going now.
Yep.
It's insane. It's insane to watch. I remember going to see. Actually, me and Scott Gemmell went to see the Verve play in New York. I think the Smashing Pumpkins supported them actually. We went to see the Verve play, and we went to see the Knicks. Went to see the Knicks play in the playoffs. So I forget what the year that was, but we were sat there going, "We're pub players. We're not athletes, man." Watching those boys play, they're approaching 7 foot. They're 6'8", all of them, and they are sprinting up and down this court. And they've got all the skills in the world. And we were just like, "What are we doing? Playing for a pub team? What's going on?" We were Premier League footballers at the time, just thinking, just in awe. So it's good to see that in the Premier League, really.
Yeah. And just to go back to the very start, Paul, you were born in Liverpool, and as we said, your passion.
Born in Bootle, yeah.
Yeah, football and music are your passions, and I'd say that football and music are the passion of the city as well. What are your memories of growing up in Liverpool around the music scene and the football scene?
I wasn't around the music scene, the football scene in Liverpool. I was born there, and let's just say, at the age of 3, let's just say my dad had to get the hell out of Dodge.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So we left, and we holed up in my dad's cousin's shop, not far from here actually, where I live now,
right,
for about 6 months. Then we got a council house, and we grew up and I lived in Nottingham from the age of 3. That said, all my family were in Liverpool, in Bootle. So every Christmas, every summer, Easter holidays, we'd shoot up to Liverpool. So my earliest memories, that was up until about the age of 11. Then comp happened. You go to the comp, don't you? And then you're there then. And that was just that. So I didn't get to see my cousins and all that from then onwards, really. So I wasn't really playing football out there, or doing any music. I was a kid when I was going up to Liverpool and that, but it was just culturally wildly different to Nottingham. The community was much stronger. I remember every Christmas was street parties. Obviously, all the red brick houses in Bootle. Everyone up and down the street singing Old Lang Syne, going upstairs to bed with all my cousins and all the families downstairs, and hearing everyone singing and laughing, and the Beatles playing, and the young kids putting on Human League and all the new music, and then all the old music. That's what I remember. I remember the community, and I remember family.
Yep.
And there's no better place in the world.
So how were you spotted, Paul, by Nottingham Forest? And were there other clubs interested at the time?
There were, yeah. Let me see. So I don't know exactly, but I came to the attention of scouts quite late, I think. Because I went and just played for teams that I enjoyed playing for. So I played for Clifford Norwhites, I played for Sandaker Town, who ironically yesterday I re-signed for. I signed for their vets. So I've gone full circle. Yeah. I signed for Sandaker. They're going to be my last team. So they were one of my first teams and my last team. They're my first Sunday team. And then very quickly, really competitively, there were Notts County had a team called Intermediates that played on a Sunday. There was a team called Pheasant Colts that played on a Saturday, and Pheasant were one of the best teams in the UK. I eventually ended up signing for Pheasants because scouts only go to see, particularly back then, there weren't many scouts. So their time was limited, their resources were limited. So they would only go and see in that division, the top division in the Young Elizabethan League, and the top 2 teams play each other. So they timed that.
Yep.
Maybe 1 and 3 or 2 and 3, but they timed that and then specifically go and look at players. So you had to be at the top teams. So I had to leave my mates and go to the top teams, but I did it quite late because I was stubborn like that. And then started getting, there was a lad at Pheasant Colts, Hodgie, who he's a great lad, love him to bits. But he was scoring all their goals. He was getting 80 goals a season. And I turned up and then started getting 120, 130. And everyone at Pheasants got signed. We had Matt Carbon, he went to played in the Premier League for West Brom. Got Mickey Galloway, Neil Glass, loads of them. Everyone played professional football, about 13 lads got signed. So it was unprecedented, really. But Odgie didn't, because he always says to me whenever I see him, like, you took my place. You should have scored more goals then, mate.
Yeah.
I eventually, on the Sunday, went to Forest's feeder team, and then signed schoolboy forms on the back of my dad's blue Cortina.
Right.
Brian Clough turned up with, bearing in mind, 13, 14. So Brian Clough turned up with Alan Hill and Alan Clark. So the three of them turned up, and he came over. I remember just being stood next to him. We'd all just finished playing. I scored a few goals, and he was just like, Alan Hill came over, was like, Mr. Clough would like a word with you. And there was a fella in the car, actually. My dad swore he was a Tottenham scout, and he was sat watching. So Clough must have heard that people were going to go and come and sign me. So I was scoring for fun. I was just scoring week in, week out. And so he came down himself personally. We're in the car park. I remember it drizzling. And Alan Hill came over to me, and he's just like, Mr. Clough would like a word with you. So I've gone over with my dad, and he's like, son, how would you like to come and play football for Brian Clough? And I'm like, looked at my dad and sort of gone, yeah. He's like, Alan, give him your pen. Anyway, this contract goes down on the table. On the bonnet of the car. And me and my dad didn't know what to do. My dad's like, what'd you do? We were about to sign for Brian Clough. The scouts in cars there. So I'm like, so I just signed it. And thank you, son. You've done, what was it he said? It was something like, you've done something very special today. Get yourself off, get rested. So I was like, okay. Got in the car. Me and my dad barely spoke. Remember the journey home, it was mad. Just in shock, and got in. And forgive my accent, but we walked through the door. My dad's gone, I think he's just fucking signed for Forest. Like to my mum. And she's like, what? Going mad. She's like, I said, yeah, I've just signed. I don't know what I've just signed. I think I've just signed something on the boot of the car. I think it was schoolboy forms. So that was me signing at 13, 14 years of age, just as my GCSEs were coming up, which I subsequently then just tossed off because I was going to be a professional footballer in my head, which was the stupidest thing I ever did. But yeah, so that's there was circling. There were lots of scouts circling. I could have gone here or there, but Cloughie just rocked up and signed me in the rain, like some vision.
And then when you were in the youth team, Paul, how many dealings did you have with Brian? You know, would you see him quite regularly or not at all, really?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, this is where my relationship with Clough really kicks in the youth team, because to set the scene, if you remember correctly, the 2 years that I was a youth team player, there would have been anyway, the year Forest went down was I was second year YTS.
Right.
So that was the year that Brian Clough got a standing ovation from 6,000 Forest fans on the football field when he retired, and they went down. You might imagine that happening to anybody now. So the year before that, and that year they went down, were my 2 YTS years. So I always describe it, and I've written a script about those 2 years. I'm going to do something with, but it's written, it's done, but can't really talk about it at the moment. But those 2 years I describe as the empire crumbling, really. And we, if you can imagine, maybe more of a metropolis crumbling, because we were the sewer rats, the youth team. You know, we were scurrying. We were literally under the tunnels, where the pipes were in the drying rooms. You know, we were scurrying around. We were making tea. We were cleaning stuff and putting it back without getting seen. We were the great unwashed. We were the unheard. You know, getting filthy underpants thrown at you, hitting you in the face. Like, get them clean, got training in an hour. Like, just the scum of the earth. But because I was a goal scorer and he loved a goal scorer, he used to love me. So I used to shadow him quite often. So you've got this sort of apprentice and sorcerer's apprentice scenario going around. He used to call me Blondie. I used to hear him shout it down the corridors. So he wouldn't be in all the time, but when he was, you'd hear his dog Del Boy first. So you'd hear the dog come scampering down, some ASMR for the audience there. You'd hear his dog come scampering down the corridor, and all that, we'd be in the youth team room, and all the lads would go, "Oh, your dad's in. Your dad's come in." I was like, fuck off. And you just hear Blondie down the corridor. So I'd have to go pretending that I resented it, but really thinking, feeling special. And I'd have to go and fix him a drink, fix him a squash. More often than not, run him a bath or get his sauna ready. Right. Because not all the time, but now and again he'd be nursing a bit of a hangover, I think. And his bath always consisted of two ice cold buckets, 2 buckets of ice, Gatorade buckets of ice in a bath filled up with cold water.
Right.
And or the sauna, or I'd have to run and do an errand for him, or more often than not, walk Del Boy.
Really? Right.
Yeah, it'd be like, go and walk Del Boy down the Trent, and don't bring him back until he's done his business. So, I'd be there, stood by the side of the Trent, like kicking his fucking dog. Like, do shit, for fuck's sake. The lads are all like walking past me. We used to walk down the Trent to training. It used to take about 20 minutes every day. 20 minutes there, 20 minutes back. Walk down the side of the Trent. The lads would all be walking past me. We stood there with a dog. And often when I'd run him a bath, he'd tell me to run myself a bath. So I'd run a nice warm bath there. And can you imagine like being 15, 16 just turned? Like 4 months ago, you got your headmaster and you with your mates in school. Then your first job, your gaffer's Brian Clough, and he's having a bath there and you're having a bath. And you got the injured lads just milling around. He's like, "How are you doing then, son? How are your mum and dad? Are they all right? Are you courting?" He just wants to learn about your life. He wants to know. He wants to know whether his centre forward's got a girlfriend, or whether he's got a stable life. And so I find myself like, "What do you do today?" "Oh, usual chores and jobs and stuff." But I had a bath with Brian Clough, walked his dog. But what I think in retrospect now, and the lads who were in the youth team with me at the time, they agree, because they got separate, different individual attention in different ways for different reasons. I think he was trying to make me feel special, because that's what he did with his forwards. If you were a goal scorer, you were elevated. Frank Clark did it to Stan Collymore to some degree as well. And if I'd scored 2 or 3 goals on the weekend, which invariably happened, "You have a bath, son. You're special. You come and have a bath. You come and have a walk with me around the pitch. You walk the dog, just bring him back when he's done it." And I'd come back and be like, "Don't bother. I'm told Archie to only train them for half an hour. Go and take £20 off my desk." £20. Bearing in mind, I was on £18.50 a week in year 1. And that only went up to 240 in year 2. So that's a YTS for you. So the most they could pay you. So 20 quid was loads. And I'd go into his room and there'd be piles of 20s like that on his desk. So, not denigrating Scousers to any degree, but I've got a certain bloodline in it. And so I'm looking at it and thinking, Jesus Christ. But that's the discipline. I only ever took 20 quid. Never would I take any more. And so I had a little bit of a baptism of fire with my relationship with Clough. And to talk about the script slightly, what I can do is it's built around this character Blondie in the middle. Again, I'm separating myself out a bit as I'm getting older. This young kid. And you've got Clough on one side, who, as we've said, his empire is crumbling. But similar was happening to my dad at home. He was struggling a bit with alcohol and was working loads, and then was just having a bad time really with it. And then you've got this character in the middle, this blondie, this young lad, 15, 16, that's dealing with that at work and dealing with that at home. And it's just this balance, and it's quite a beautiful little world. It's quite a lovely little script. I'm really quite proud of it. But so that's what that's about. And yeah, the final scene sort of wraps this all up really in my relationship with Clough. Have you ever seen the footage of that day when he goes down, when Forest go down, and he gets interviewed? Is it Martin Tyler? I think it might be Martin Tyler that interviews him. I forget who's interviewing.
Does he sort of wave to the crowd and then puts his green jumper on?
But he does a singular interview, and it's in the old gym. I say gym. There were 3 rickety machines in there and all the ball bags. That was it. So there were 4 people in that room, and it might be Martin Tyler. I forget. Sorry, I do forget. The cameraman, Brian Clough, and me, just off camera. If you watch the interview, it's the one where he goes, Mr. Clough, it's been an honour. And Brian Clough sort of like, he wells up and he goes, there's this real gutter. It comes from nowhere. And he goes, thank you, son. And even when I talk about that now, and when people watch that, I send shivers down my spine. Because I think that's the moment he realizes it's done. It's over. And that's the second to last scene in the script. But that then was the last time I saw him. We heard him often because he would still come to reserve games. As I'd evolved from the youth team into the reserves, we'd be playing Leicester, and you'd be playing Leicester reserves at Leicester's ground or wherever we might be, and you'd just hear, "Blondie, fucking stand still! You're running around like a bloody lunatic," and then that'd be, and you'd looking around, and you'd be up in the stands somewhere. So his ghost hovered for a while. The spectre of Brian Clough still hovered around the club for a while, and you could argue did for 20 odd years, but that's a different story.
And do you think having such a figure at the start of your career really helped you? Because you said at that age you were full of confidence anyway, but to have one of the greatest managers of all time rate you as well as a top striker, that must have been amazing.
Yeah, he was a striker himself, so it's one of those things. When same with players that you look up to, when they can do it and they've been there and done it. And by the way, people say he'd have beat Jimmy Greaves's scores, tallies, because he was that good and he was on track to do so. He was a phenomenal centre forward. So yeah, to have somebody that you respect, that we all knew how good he was. Particularly the forwards were always pulled to one side. So the gaffer did this, gaffer did listen to the gaffer when it comes to centre forwards and so. Yeah, it was amazing to feel special in that way. Didn't fully grasp it. Like I said, I was a young boy, so you don't fully grasp it, you don't understand it. But again, in retrospect, looking back, that period for me was so rich, which is why. And again, the resurgence under Frank Clark, it was just so full of life that I didn't even, it's only looking back through the lens of a really intense lens of COVID, really. I still haven't worked out why it was so intense under COVID. Like I say, maybe like a warm blanket, maybe it was fear, I don't know. But those 2 periods in my life that sort of blended into one were so full of life and was so rich. And like I say, I was around a genius and world-class footballers, under Frank Clark, where we were finishing 3rd in the Premier League and playing in Europe. So when you look at that, someone like myself, who anyone will tell you knows me, this is recent for me. I've never looked back, ever. Doesn't bother me, not interested. It always seemed crude. Mm-hmm. But now it's almost like a really rich river that I'm fishing from and bringing stuff forward into the now and making it relevant now and making it interesting now. So yeah, looking back at that time and thinking about, to run the river analogy, the ripples that were caused from having people like Clough around you and the sort of advice you'd hear every day. I still tell it now. I coach my daughter's football team. Gedling Town, and even now, I'm telling wingers, because when I used to play on the wing, because I used to play centre forward, but to break into the reserves, we used to have to come and play on the wing sometimes. And he'd just scream at me to come and get chalk on my boots, and he'd come and check my boots to see if I'd got chalk on my boots. And he used to scream at me to stand still. What that used to do, it lets the game flow and it lets you breathe. And what it does to you is it puts you in it's almost like cheating, but it puts you in a position where space is created. When you receive the ball on the touchline, you've stood still. You're in a false position. So you've got 30 yards to run into with the football at any given point. It's really smart. So stuff like that I pass on, and there's all kinds. There's so much to pass on.
So, Paul, around that time when you did break into the first team, what was that dressing room like? Because I'm sure it was full of massive characters. You know, you had sort of Des Walker in the early 90s, you had Stuart Pearce, Crossley. Later on, you had like Ian Woan, Steve Stone. What was it like as a younger player to go into that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think all those players with their Des had gone by the time I was sort of breaking through. Yeah, I did there was a 96 reunion a couple of months ago about that team, the European run team. And yeah, I think since doing that, I've sort of realized, been thinking about it, like, I think going into that dressing room, like you say, you had to have something. You couldn't go in there as a shy, retiring. If you would just sit there quietly, you just weren't getting away with it. So again, having the music thing and walking in with a bit of, a look, a style. I had something about me, and I think that's all they want. They want somebody with something, some character. What are you going to bring to the dressing room? Is what they're after, and I think I had that. I was. I think they sort of loved that about me, that I was individual, and I just didn't care. I wasn't fearful. I was going in there wearing, I'd walk in white drain pipe 501s because I'd been to see the Manics. I was really into early Manic stuff. I had to talk myself out of wearing eyeliner that morning. It was just, I was proper in that mode. Like the first one wearing all the big Stony stuff, all the big Stone Island stuff, and all the terrace casual thing I was bringing into the dressing room. And the lads were like, "What's this boy about?" You know what I mean? Like, and I was just fearless. Again, when I think back about that kid, and you've got 3-4 England internationals in that room, and some proper big names. Stan was in there, and some big players, and yeah, walking in that room utterly fearless, thinking that I deserved. You have to think like this. Like you have to walk on. I remember watching I had a video when I was growing up watching football. It was a John Barnes video, who was my hero at Liverpool, along with Rushy. And he said that he had moments like that, but he's just like, unless you are walking out on that pitch thinking that you're the best player on that pitch, you have no business being there. And I always remembered that. And I always felt that way walking onto training. And what that does is you look over and you see someone like Lars Bohinen doing 300 keep-ups with an orange, and you're just like, okay. And you see watching Brian Roy do skills who just won the European Championships, just doing skills with the football. You're like, oh my God. Seeing Stan never miss a target and take the roof off the net all the time, and Stone his tenacity and winning tackles and being not only winning all the running races, winning the long distance, grafting on the pitch, but can play brilliant football, and just thinking everyone here has got something special, like genuinely special. And you go, okay, well, if I'm going to run that John Barnes adage and carry that on as a philosophy, then what have I got? What am I doing here? So yeah, I'd find myself, the reserves would play the first team on a Friday or a Thursday, And because I'd be playing on the right wing, it was like me up against Stuart Pearce for an hour on a Thursday. And we'd have a laugh because he'd wallop me a few times, but every time I got that ball, I was going at him. And what an amazing thing for a young lad to get the opportunity to get the football. And I was faster than him. If I got the opportunity to knock it past him and go, I'd beat him. And this is the England left back, psycho. And being able to pit your wits against more. Don't get me wrong, he got the better of me the majority of the time. I was a young lad learning my trade. He was an experienced, brilliant fullback. But that got rid of any, no one intimidated me after that. Julian Dix, Ben Thatcher, he wasn't interested. It wasn't like water off a duck's back. And as you can imagine, they all wanted to. Vinnie Jones, Fashanu, see me coming on a pitch with the flowing locks. They all thought, what the hell have we got here? So I kind of played on that. I loved it. I fell into that character. And again, coming back to characters, playing a character, I think I've possibly something I took from Bowie, but I think it's something that's a protective thing as well. Projecting your dream onto the future you. Do you know what I mean? Almost going, here's what I want. That's how I need to get it. I'm going to be the person that I need to be to get that. Yep. And I've always done that naturally without even really thinking about it. That's probably why Bowie's my number one, my favorite. I love the fact that he's underneath it all. He's just a proper funny, normal lad, yep, but created these oddities to go and as vehicles for his art, really, and his expression and where he wanted to get to. And I think that's why I love him so much.
Yeah. And do you think, Paul, you obviously had that goal scoring ability, but do you think you had that character as well? Is what maybe earned the players' respect a little bit quicker because you were individual and that you weren't afraid to be who you were?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, you want character on a pitch. Loads of players are good players, but you want character. It's the character that wins you titles. It's the characters that wins you cups. And again, going back to this class of '96, sometimes, like I said earlier, I got in and got out in terms of my Forest career. There are players that aren't remembered as well as me that have played 300 games in Forest midfield. No one remembers them really. But I've got this really great name. Everyone goes, "Oh, that's the guy who did it," and it's exciting and it's fun. It's it's bubblegum, and I kind of like that. So set on the stage with all these boys like Colin Cooper, who played England caps and God knows how many. I mean, what a player Coops was. No matter how many caps he got, and appearances for Forest, and Mark Crosley, international. Again, loads of appearances. Steve Stone, Ian Wone, Chet, all these players that loads and loads of appearances under the belt, and there's me. I possibly got 20 odd for Forest, but and I'm there, self-depreciating, sort of going. It was like a Christmas number one. That was my career at Forest. I got in, went boom. There's the two most important goals ever, and then fucked off. And everyone was laughing at that. And I was talking about the guys being proper players, but what was lovely, what was genuinely really beautiful, they all piped up and went, Mac has put himself down there. He was a real character on a pitch, and we knew that we gave him the football. It was something special was going to happen. He might lose it now and again, which is probably why I didn't start as much as I wished. I thought I deserved breaking into the team. Frank Clough didn't start me as much as I wanted to. But if I was coming on the pitch, something was happening, and all the lads were saying pretty much the same, which was wonderful to hear. Of people that have been there, done it properly. In terms of my Premier League career, I did have and still do to some degree, until I watch it back, a bit of imposter syndrome. But every now and again, my dad will go, "Yeah, come and watch this. I watched this the other day," and I'll watch it. And I'll just be like, "Who is that kid?" I didn't give the ball away. I came on with 20 minutes, at West Ham, I think it was, when I scored my first goal. Played really, really well. I was a good footballer. Do you know what I mean? At the top level. And and it surprises me because I don't think of myself like that. I can just hear Ian Wone bollocking me all the time. Right. It's still in my head as I'm falling to sleep. And then when I watch it back, I go, "Oh, no. I was in one of the best footballing sides the Premier League scene. You know, we kept the football, Nottingham Forest. That was the ethos. Even when we play in the Legends games now, whoever we play, Forest play how Forest play. They keep the football simple, simple, simple. Pass, move, but play teams off the park. Yep. That was Clough's way, you know, and we do that still now. Like Derby or County or anyone, Leicester, they'll just sprinting their heads off all over the place, and we're just like, which is great. So you don't get to play for Forest unless you're a good footballer and your basics are there and you keep the football. So yeah, when I look back, I feel quite proud of the player I was. But to go to your question, yeah, I think all those players were characters, big characters, and I think that's what they respected in me more than anything. Like, and the fact you can hold your own on a night out as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just as important then. Just as important, which we did often. We were probably the last of the big drinkers, due to the culture that we grew up in. I remember when Pete Edwards came in. He was at that night, actually. Lovely to see him. When he came and started trying to introduce the right diet and you know, and all kinds of stuff. Bless him. Oh God, he got absolutely caned. Bearing in mind, this is the team that we'd win on the Saturday, see you Tuesday, you know, and Wednesday nights are always the big night out, and everyone coming hungover Thursday, running session, Friday, tippy tap five-a-side, play in the Premier League Saturday. Mental.
Because as you say, Paul, Forest Cup play, they finished third, and you were in the UEFA Cup as well. And you mentioned that you're really well remembered, and what helped that as well was a great goal you scored against Lyon. What are your memories of that night?
Just insane, insane, really. I mean, it was. I can't talk about that night without talking about the whole week, because 3 days the next day, Frank Clark took me away with the reserves, and I started and I played half a game. I think that was a feet on the ground job. And then I made my home debut on the Saturday against Manchester United and scored. So that week, like back page of the national press, twice in a week for this young kid, was mind blowing. But again, with that, looking back with that kind of projection, I took it in my stride. It was just, well, of course, that's what's going to happen. You're scoring goals at the top level. That's what's going to happen. And it was all natural to me. I didn't even read the papers, saw the pictures, was buzzing. But like, that was that. But yeah, that I was on the bench quite a lot for the European run. And Lyon were a good side. They were a really good side. And the previous two games were Auxerre, who we should have really lost to. How we beat Auxerre, I have no idea. Particularly away when Steve Stone scored an early winner, and we just camped on the edge. The boys camped on the edge of their own box, proper Harry Maguire and everything, like tackling with their heads and everything. It was crazy. We should never have won that game. And then to get to the Lyon game, and just being sat on the bench and just, you know, and again, this isn't against the centre forwards, but when you start a game has a particular flow. So you can have world-class centre forwards, but you can see sat on the bench that they've been nullified. Yes, they could come up with something special, but ordinarily you just let that run out. You know, they it's like that old thing, isn't it? It's like, if you don't change anything, you going to keep making the same mistakes. The same things are going to happen. You're going to get the same results all the time. So I was sat there itching on the bench, as was Bobby Howe, who I came on with, just thinking, just throw us on, like because they were tired as well. And Frank Clark threw us on with about 26 minutes to go, something like that. And the look of fear in the two defenders' eyes that two young whippersnappers had come on. The first thing they did was put a ball over the top for me. And they were just like, right, this can't be happening. So anytime the ball came near us, they were walloping us left, right, and centre. And me and Bobby just put the fear of God into them, so much to the point where we were so camped in their final third because they dropped off deep, because we were just going, me and Bobby, anything would just over the top, put it over the top. Like, I'll beat them for pace all day long. They're knackered. Old men, they're knackered. I'll do them. And we terrorized them. And the ball fell to Bobby on the edge of the box, and he had a volley, and the defender's just gone like this and just handled it in the box. And I don't believe in anything supernatural or fate or anything like that. It's not me. It's not me. Good luck to anyone that does. But something in me thought, right, follow this up properly, because if he misses this, I'm going to be on the end of it. And I think that level of belief can feel like the gods conspiring. You know what I mean? It felt other, which was great. So I do encroach on the penalty. If you look back, you see the penalty. I'm in the box by
I can see before Stuart Pearce even kicked the ball. You're there. I can see.
You can see how eager I am. So
yeah.
That's the mentality in my head. I'm going to beat everyone to this ball. So I've looped around and made a run. Like, you don't see anyone making it. I've made a run to be in the box, and the keeper's parried it. And it's crazy how I remember this moment, because it's one of the biggest moments in my life, up there with the birth of my child and all that kind of stuff. How time slows down, and I can remember it frame by frame by frame by frame. I can remember the keeper parrying it. No, I can remember sprinting in and seeing the keeper going the right way. I can remember it looking easy for him. It was a poor penalty, to be fair, from Skip. And he's parried it down. He could have caught it. And I've watched how it's come down, and it's just fallen. It's going to fall nice for me if I slide, and I've got a nice, simple half volley in the top left-hand corner, because that's where all the space was. And I've just done it exactly right. All the it's those 10,000 hours. That's everything you've been trained for. There was no thought process. It seems like there was a thought process now, but looking back, it's all instinct. It's training. It's in the moment. It hit the back of the net, and I stood up, and there's about 50 lads that I knew in the crowd, all there. So I'm like, out to them, whoa! And it just went crazy. And at that, like, this rush of, whoa, I've made it. I've made it. You know what I mean? Like, that's it. I look over at the A block. I knew my dad was there, and they were going, because that's where all the lunatics go. And that was going mental. All the lads are grabbing me. And then we've got to hold on. And that's the goal that got us through to face Bayern Munich. So for up until possibly recently, it was arguably the most important goal in Forest's recent history, because it got us to that moment, along with Chet's goal against Bayern Munich.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, it didn't get us through to the next round, because they destroyed us at our place. Bearing in mind, they had Ziegler, Papan, Kahn, Mateus, Klinsmann. They were all right.
Not a bad side.
They were all right. So if anybody ever has a go at me or my career, it's like, oh, who's the best team you played against? Well, I can list this team that I played against once. You know, that's not bad. Double World Cup winners.
And you mentioned, Paul, that was a huge week for you. Then, you play Man United and you score. But you mentioned before that, Frank Clark maybe didn't give you as many opportunities as you would have liked. And when you look at Forest in the 90s, that there was quite a lot of money spent on strikers. You had Collymore, you had Kevin Campbell. What was that like? Pierre Van Hooijdonk later on. Yeah. What was that like for you? You're trying to get your opportunity, and there seems to be a roadblock all the time.
It was difficult as a centre forward, because I was looking around, and we'd grown up playing against, because Clough and Ferguson were friends. So we would often play, probably once a month, maybe once every 2 months. Maybe I've got rose-tinted glasses, but we'd play Man United's youth team often in friendlies, go to the Cliff, or they'd come to our ground. So we used to play against Beckham and Scholes, and quite often we got to know them quite well, same age group. And I used to think when they all got thrown in United's team, I used to think, not that I wanted to play for Man United, it was the last thing I wanted, but I used to think, if I was there, I'd be in up front. They'd have thrown me in, and looking at Fowler coming through. I had the weird, when I actually played against Liverpool, started at Anfield, which was insane. But Robbie Fowler had become a hero to me, and he was my generation, he was my age. It was really, really strange. I held him in such esteem. But yeah, looking at Noel, you had Noel Whelan, you had Jamie Forrester coming through, and they were getting thrown in and trusted. I see Frank quite often, Frank Clark, and we joke about it. And it just is what it is. But I think the biggest compliment he could give me, that they were spending money on centre forwards, and I'm sat there and I'm looking at Kevin Campbell, I'm looking at Jason Lee, I'm looking at Brian Roy, I'm looking at not so much Pierre, because Pierre, I'd already been injured by then, and they had new managers in. Bassett was in then.
Yeah.
But I'm sat looking, and obviously great centre forwards, great players. But as a young lad, a young confident lad, I'm thinking, he doesn't do what I can do well. He doesn't do this. I'd have scored that. I'd have made that run. And you're picking faults in the game, because you do. You're gonna, right? You're gonna go, I'd have done that better. Or Cam's, for example. Oh, he holds the ball up, and like a ball, anything that came from the back four was sticking. Now I can't do that, you know. And I get why you'd be playing in certain games, but we're putting balls in over the top for Kevin Campbell. Like, I'm just sat here, like, give me a go. So I was frustrated with it. I was. I'll hold my hands up to that. And I do feel if I'd have been given a run of 10 games, I'd have had a very different career. That said, one of the biggest compliments I've ever really been given was Frank. We had Steve Stone on the right wing. Steve Stone was having the season of his life, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, 4 seasons of his life. He was amazing. Playing for England. He was England's right winger. And in order to get me on the pitch, Frank Clark was shifting. We were building in pre-season to shift Steve Stone from right wing to centre midfield so I can play right wing. So I was displacing the England right winger. So I was buzzing. And then I snapped my knee. Just snapped it in the final minute of the final pre-season game at Arnold Town. The pitch was a cow field, and I've just gone to bring this football down. Mark Crossley's whacked this ball over, and I've brought it down, and my knee's just buckled completely. So yeah, I was right next to the touchline. A young girl actually threw up because of the sound, and she saw my knee buckle like this. It was disgusting.
So how long were you on the sidelines after that injury?
6 months to the day.
Right.
But within that time, we'd had Stuart Pearce was manager, Dave Bassett was manager. And it was, you go from being the great white hope, the kid whose career has been exponential, and 6 months ago was scoring in Europe, to being shifted into the reserve team room because you're surplus to requirements. And that was a tough place to go because, I got caned, You get absolutely battered. That was mentally really, really tough. People talk about how mentally tough it was going to the first team room. It was twice as hard going back into the reserve team room with bitter players that hadn't made it and were never going to make it and loved the fact that you were back.
Because looking at your career, Paul, as well, often when players are learning the trade, they'll go out on loan a lot. But your potential was that huge. You were already in the first team. And so your Nottingham Forest career was actually the other way, that you played for Forest, and then it was after the injury that you then went out on loan. So I can appreciate, how difficult that must have been, that, scoring against Lyon and Manchester United, and then all of a sudden, through no fault of your own, those opportunities are taken away.
Yeah, and it was a massive learning curve how brutal football is. Dave Bassett came in, nothing against Dave Bassett at all. I got why they brought Bassett in. He started to bring players in like Andy Johnson that I just thought, God, he's not a Forest person. You know what I mean? Like, he's ace Andy Johnson, but he's a lunatic, like a world-class lunatic. If he was sat here with me now, I'd say the same thing. He's a brilliant lad. He's a brilliant lad, but good heavens, like how he's not dead, how he's lived a life like that. It's the same with Tank as well. Alan Rodgers.
Yep.
These boys live their life with their foot on the accelerator in any direction. But didn't seem like a Forest. They didn't seem like Forest people to me. There was a culture around the club. are you first and foremost a good person? Are we going to get on with you? Are you a character? It was like that went out the window. It was just, he's going to do a job for me, in he comes. The rest will just deal with itself. He was wild. The pair of them were wild, to be fair. Mental. They're great. I've had them both on the Forest podcast. I love them both to bits, but good Lord. But yeah, so all these new players were coming in, and Dave Bassett was just like, listen, he got me in. He was like, listen, you're not in my plans. I was like, okay, all right, fair enough. At least I know. I'll help you out, send you out on loan and stuff. But I was injured. So I had another 3 months to sit around. And that was tough as well. Trying to get back fit to God knows what. I don't know. Where am I going to go? Once I'm fit, who's going to take a chance on me? So you're thinking, you're having to fight, stay strong. You'll get back in. I'll fight my way back in. I'll fight for a place. Which, to my credit, I did. So I got told I was surplus to requirements, got fit, started playing reserves. And I think Dave Bassett must have gone, all right. He hasn't lost his pace. He's confident. He's still do a bit. He's going past people. Scored a couple of goals. All right. So then I went with, he picked me. He picked me to go to Portsmouth away. So first game back. Now, I don't know if you remember Portsmouth. I don't know if it's still the same ground, if I'm honest. Fratton Park, isn't it? Are they still at Fratton Park?
Yeah.
So anyway, you're 3 yards away from the fans when you're warming up. They're there.
Really tight pitch.
They are there. And I was getting all sorts. Because I had long blonde hair. I was getting, oh my God, the amount of stick that were giving it. My mum, my sister, just everything. I was getting so much stick. Every time I warmed up, fucking blonde, screaming out horrendous stuff. I've heard it all before, but I was just like, piss off, lads. Like, wait. So anyway, gone back in, gone out to warm up. They're waiting for me. So they had a bee in the bonnet about me. So I'm warming up. And anyway, so I'm there and I'm stretching. There's nowhere I could stretch that I wasn't getting stick. So I was stretching. I've just gone like that. Scratched the back of my head with 2 fingers. Let's put it that way. I had 2 itches. Let's put it there on the back of my head. And cut a long story short, found myself a month later at the FA, got done for inciting a riot on my first game back. So the police stormed the dressing room at half time. I got hit. They hid me in the toilets. And our coaching staff had to say, you're not having him. You're not having him. You are not taking a player from it. Like, he's committed this offence. He's a disgrace. He needs to go to jail now. So I'm sat in the toilet. First game back. And the police eventually left because our coaching staff were like, you're not having him. We'll deal with it. So anyway, I had to get dressed. I had to go sit on the bus. The lads came back. We went off. 2-week fine. I went into the gaffer's room, and he was like, Macca, respect for what you've done, but you can't. You're done. Like, that's it. You can't come back in here and then get done for inciting a riot. You're going out on loan. So I was at Carlisle 3 weeks later.
Right.
And then came back, obviously. Within the meantime, Bassett had gone. And the horrendous human that is Ron Atkinson had come in. Now, Ron Atkinson, about 3 months previous, there was a little fold out on the front of Match magazine with the 6 top young stars in the country. Robbie Fowler, Noel Whelan, these sorts of players. And I was one of them. And Ron Atkinson had picked them. So I was thinking, Ron Atkinson, this is going to be great. It's going to be amazing. So anyway, we're on the training ground his first day, and he's come walking over with Peter Shreves, who's like Mr. Burns, by the way, just the most horrific human you can imagine. And he's gone, right, no word of a lie. Like, players that have played in World Cups, like international players, Premier League footballers. And he's gone, right, let's see what we've got here then. Because I don't want any fucking rock stars in my team. So I'm stood there like the blood drained out of me. I went white. I was like that. And he went, fuck off, back to the dressing room. I was like, okay. Felt about that big. Horrible. Went back to the dressing room. I was obviously in the reserves again, having a hellish time, and getting pulled in probably once every 2 weeks. Ron Atkinson would sit at his desk, and him and Peter Shreves just used to level insults at me. Peter Shreves would be like this close to my face, going, "Why are you fucking injured again? You fucking." He's about this big. Like, mate, my dad don't talk to me like that. Like, I'll just spread you on the wall. Move. Ron Atkinson sat there, Anyway, it was awful, absolutely horrible. So I couldn't get out quick enough, and David Moyes took me to Preston, which was he was great. He was really honest with me. Told me I'd come for cover, and he wasn't going to sign me. But he said, "Look, he said, to the positive, I only bring players in that I rate, that I trust." He's like, "So I've brought you over. I know you've got good pedigree. I've seen you play." He said, "And I'll help you get a club after." He said, "And I'll tell you what I'll do for you." He said, "The fact that you're giving me everything all the time, and you're coming over and traveling, and you're helping us out." He said, "I'll give you one-to-one training after training every day if you want." So I spent 3 months on loan at Preston, knowing I wasn't going to get signed, looking for a club, but having one-to-one sessions with David Moyes, which was invaluable, which I'll always be, because you think of the difference there. All you ever want is honesty. You just want honesty and a stand-up guy. I'll run through a brick wall for you. You start slagging me off, mate, you get like, we've got an issue. I don't care how big you are.
Because although you weren't going to be signed, he's treated you properly, hasn't he? So you must have felt much better about that.
Exactly. And he's given me his time. Yeah, he's given me his time, and like I did loads of stuff with like beating cones and putting whipping crosses in, and he gave me loads of tips on where to aim for and do. He was fantastic. He was great with me. So I love him to bits. What a privilege, by the way. 3 months one-on-one coaching with David Moyes was great.
Yeah.
And then had offers from clubs, but Plymouth Argyle just really went all out. Like, invited me down. City's it's beautiful there. You know what I mean? I had no idea where Plymouth was. Genuinely, had to look it up. Went down with my dad and Kevin Hodges and Steve McCall, who, by the way, was some footballer. He played in that great Ipswich side. One of the best footballers I've ever played with, by the way, Steve McCall. Unreal. One of those sorts of players like Chris Waddle, who would just go past 3 players and has barely ran, hasn't broken sweat. How are you still got the football? A wonderful footballer. But yeah, went down there and they just said, "Listen, you're going to be the first name on the team sheet. Just go and express yourself." And didn't score for 11 games. Everyone's like, who the fuck have we signed here? And then I hit one. I was right on the byline. I hit one. It's hit someone's foot and looped in and gone in. And then I didn't stop scoring for 2 years. Player of the year, top goal scorer, fans player of the year, players player. And just had the most wonderful, wonderful time at that club. And I adore that club like I adore Nottingham Forest.
And I read, Paul, there was one game away at Torquay where you scored a hat-trick. You actually won Torquay's man of the match.
I did. That's true. Yeah. I mean, that whole game's on YouTube, and it banged it down. It absolutely smashed it down. I've never known rain like it. And the Plymouth fans were all in the away end where there's no cover, and they were bouncing the entire game. And now that's going to keep you going. The pitch was like a mud bath. Within 2 minutes, and you couldn't be. If I'd have walked into the sea and walked out, I couldn't be wetter. And but yeah, I was just walking. I was on cloud 9, mate. There, I didn't care who I was playing against. I just felt like the best footballer in the world going out on the pitch at Plymouth Argyle. I loved it. Confidence was through the roof again. To really enjoy it, scoring goals. Couldn't go anywhere without people stopping you. It was brilliant, having that back again. And Paul Sturrock came in. That was fantastic. And he said, "Listen, I want to build a team around you," but only offered me $5,000 a year more.
Right.
He said, "There's no money at the minute." He's like, "But if you sign next year," he said, "We're going to go up this year. I'm telling you now, we'll go up this year." He said, and he offered me $5,000 a year. Well, Northampton Town had contacted my agent and offered me double my wages.
Right.
So basically gone, here's $120,000 a year. Closer to home.
Yeah.
And I said, "Gaffer, get anywhere near that. I want to stay at Plymouth, get anywhere near that, get to 80, 90, and we'll have a chat. He was like, can't, next year. And then, biggest mistake of my life, went to Northampton, 1,000 managers in 10 minutes, apathetic fans, shit all over the ground, odd little weird place. It's neither northern nor southern, no identity. Awful experience. Coaches that were bullies, nasty people, horrible. Just the lads were sound, by the way. The lads were great. Still speak to a lot of the lads now. They were good lads, but just awful. I had an awful time. And Plymouth, under Sturrock, went boom, boom. 2 years on the bounce. And when I go back now, I have a wonderful time. When I get invited back, like to talk before the games and all that kind of stuff, and go out on the pitch at half time. I've said in a recent Plymouth Argyle podcast, it hurts me to see murals of my teammates, all round the ground, everywhere, of that legendary team that went up 2 years on the bounce to the Championship, and it does break my heart a little bit, I have to say.
Because I recently spoke to Hasni Al Joffrey, who I think signed the season after you left.
That's right.
That is, you're absolutely spot on. That was an iconic team for Plymouth. You know, I'm just a football fan with no affiliation, but I can still remember, David Norris. Evans.
Well, I was there with Evans. I was there with Watsy and David and Lorio. So they were all my boys.
Yeah,
and it was crazy. I mean, seeing Watsy, because he was breaking into the team, and all he had at the time, he wasn't a brilliant footballer, and all he had at the time was this passion, and the coaches were seeing something in him. I was just like, what is like? But then I'd train against him, and we'd always fall out because he was all over me all game, kicking me. I was like, mate, I'm playing Saturday. What are you doing? He's like, shut up, you fanny, shut up. And in the dressing room was sound. Going out was sound. But he's all over me. And he's scoring 50-yard free kicks out of nowhere every week and rallying the team and being this Stuart Pearce type figure. And I was like, I get it now. I get it. I understood it. And I was delighted for him. Absolutely delighted for him.
And it goes back to what you said about Forest with the characters. You need characters in the dressing room.
Oh, and he became a massive character, Still a crap player, but it was only joking. Yeah. So I was delighted for him. And David as well. When David came, I was like, we're signing some proper players here. I love those boys, but it does stings slightly. In the best way, in the best way.
Paul, you're a Premier League striker in the 90s, but you're also in a band called Merc with some school friends.
We were a school band. Literally, we rehearsed in my mate's local village hall because his mum knew the owner, or she cleaned there or something. And it was my first ever band. We were a school band. We'd been knocking about since we were about 13. I did that classic thing of like, just sort of liking music, but then when I got to comp, it was I had mates in my class that had older brothers, so all of a sudden it was just like, well, here's New Gold Dream by Simple Minds, here's War by U2, here's all these amazing great bands, it's Killing Joke, here's it's like boom. And then all the, not so much Britpop, but the formations of Britpop. Well, 89 happened essentially, 88, 89. And, let's not beat around the bush. The Stone Roses album came out, and that was that. That was our generation. That was just a whole new world. I know it's a cliche, but it's often described, that album, as like just everything was black and white. All bands were cool, and Jesus and Mary Chain and post-punk and all this. And then the Roses were just colour and bubblegum and 60s and psychedelia, and everyone just fell in love with it. Burst out of the acid house scene, didn't it? So and that happened. So I'm a school band, essentially, got on the back of that, and we were still into like earlier stuff. So I think our first ever gig at school, I think we were all 14, and the set list was, I think, Song of a Baker by the Small Faces, I think we did a Cream track. We did She Wears Denim Wherever She Goes. The Concept by Teenage Fan Club. I think we played Stay Beautiful by the Manics. And then one of our own. Oh, and I Want to Be Your Dog by the Stooges. So, and that school band, we just kind of carried on playing. And the second anybody found out that I had a band when I was at Forest, and the whole Britpop thing started emerging and happening, and it was like, there's a footballer, got a cool haircut, he's clearly into this scene. And he's got a band, wow. And then all of a sudden, that band, Select Magazine want to do a piece on you, and Loaded want to do a piece. And all of a sudden, we're playing shows, we're getting offered London shows, so we're playing the Garage in Islington, and we're playing up in Manchester, the Boardwalk, we're playing everywhere. We've got a manager, Andy Copping, who was running Rock City at the time. He now runs Live Nation. And really, we knew we weren't ready. We knew we had about 5 of our own songs. We were building towards an album, but we were still playing. Like, we played Rock On by David Essex. We played Made in Heaven by Bebop Deluxe. So we was just still finding our feet with being on the stage and stuff. And we played this show. We played Disco 2 at Rock City, where I am not comparing us to the Sex Pistols or the Velvet Underground in any way, by the way, because like I say, we were a school band. But those gigs where people say, oh, I was there. And it's like, well, it only held 400 people, and I must have been told by 600 that we were there. It was one of those. So but it was just a mad night. Sky came down. There's a documentary about the night. We played, the whole front row was the front row was a load of girls. And then the second row and the third row was my Forest teammates. So all the lads are there down the front like this. And then the room was absolutely rammed to the rafters. We played about 35 minutes. And it was carnage backstage afterwards. It was just cameras everywhere. Anyway, it's insane. And that happened to that band, but the guitarist hated that all that was happening because I was a footballer, because he believed we were a decent band, and he hated all that crap around it. Plus, he was a kid, so he's going to think that and be idealistic, so I should say. And I was kind of riding it, but I felt I knew what he meant. And so we sort of ended it. But for years, even now, people mention Merc to me. Even now, even after Merc finished, I went to Plymouth, still made music with some mates. My brother started getting involved. But even after, when Ulterior, the band I left football to be in, started doing really hitting. I mean, the month I retired from football, we got put on the front cover as the new part of the dark wave of London, the underground London scene that was happening with the Horrors and bands like that, and Selfish. You can swear on here, can't you?
Yeah.
So Selfish Cunt, who are great. If you've never listened to Selfish Cunt, check them out. Martin from Selfish Cunt got the Enemy said he was the 7th best frontman of all time, which is crazy. But if you've ever seen them live, oh my God. Insane band, incredible band. So anyway, it was a privilege to be on the front cover with them. And so that's how it sort of crossed over. And like I say, Ulterior went off, and I had 10 years touring the world with Ulterior, releasing 2 albums and playing with some of our favorite bands, and playing all over the world, big shows, massive shows, playing really cool shows, having amazing times. Like I say, releasing albums, and no one bats an eyelid in England. Can't get we played London shows, did well in London, but had to fight ourselves, have to pick up a guitar and fight our way off stages quite often up north. Bearing in mind, Ulterior were the cornerstones. The reason Ulterior sounded how they sounded early on was because we despised the Libertines. We thought, if that's where guitar music is going after Oasis, where it's barely a tune, and it's clanking around, and it's smacky, and it's just crap, like jangle. We hated it. Come round, by the way. Libertine's great. I love what it's all about. It's fine. But at the time, we wanted the opposite of that. We thought where Britpop or good guitar, working class guitar music should be going was more electronic, more towards like bands like the Cooper Temple Claws were trying to do. And Kasabian almost got to, but in my opinion, didn't quite get to, but still did a good version of what they were doing, obviously. But we had a vision of that and really going into the dance arena, like bands like Primal Scream had, like really absorbed acid house and then created Screamadelica with Andrew Weatherall. And you've got this great crossover. We thought we could be heavy, like massive choruses like Oasis, big and heavy. But we were so bored with guitar music that we were going to techno clubs.
Yeah.
Because that's how we felt music should move you. Like you've been in a techno club and your rib cage is running down. We're like, oh my God, this is insanely good. This must be what it must have been like to watch the Stooges, that visceral. And guitar music was flailing around in the right haircuts. And you could argue it always has been, but I guess we were bored of it. So we slipped into sounding like a techno band. We stayed in a room for 2 years. I bought Blur's 2.5K rig off them, and we rehearsed in a room about the size of this bedroom I'm in now, with a 2.5K rig in a warehouse in Sneinton in Nottingham for 2 years, with strobes going when we'd come out like rattling, playing techno. Like I say, the cornerstones were Jesus and Mary Chain, Psycho Candy, Feedback, blistering Feedback, thrash white noise guitars, nails, hard as nails techno, not fanning around, but boom, boom. And Holy Bible era Mannix sloganeering, because when I left football, I was disgusted at myself for not taking my education seriously. So I delved deep into literature and reading, and I was reading everyone. I was just like devouring 4 books a week, because Richie Manick was my songwriting hero. And I thought, well, if he's done it and I want to get to that level, I need to understand a lot of things quickly and understand the references and understand everything. So that's who we were. So we were just like this. When we were playing London, we played at people. It was never with people. So we were playing pretty quickly. We were playing like we'd turn up. I bought a van, cost me $2,000. By the way, never buy a van. You're everyone's best mate when you bought a van every weekend.
Yeah.
But so yeah, we'd go to the venue. We'd be on at 1 a.m, 2 a.m, like on a skate ramp with a massive PA, like 2,000 lunatic kids in London off their faces, and we'd come on like, and they'd go mental for it, absolutely mental. So we had, and obviously invariably there'd be fights and it'd all kick off, someone not get paid. But what London didn't get about us is that we were northern lads, and promoters thought they could have our pants down and like we'd just go in and kick off and not be scared about the bouncers, or like, so we scrapped our way around London. Like we just thought if we're going to do it, we're going to do this properly. Yeah. And it's going to be like early guns, we're going to live it. We are going to hit this hard. And we're going to do it on our terms. People were scared stiff of us. Like we know people that were in bands that got warned by their labels not to hang out with us. Really? Yeah, they're doing the wrong drugs, they're playing the wrong gigs, they're wearing the wrong clothes. Do not go near those kids. They are meant. Well, I was 28 at the time, so I wasn't so much a kid, but we did it properly. Like we went for the jugular. So Europe loved us because all our gigs were events. We never just went and played. If you see there's some early footage, if anyone's interested, of early Ulterior. We played a night in Manchester called Barbed Wire Kisses. And it's a really good indication of how we sound and looked. just constant strobing, head to toe in leather, with like early Raf Simons hoodies, just like this mad mixture of goth, but street goth, sports goth. It was mental. Like tracky bottoms with leather jackets and stuff. Well, it's everywhere now, but at the time, people were like, what is going on? Just at people. And if anyone was giving it the big one with a pint, I was in their face. I was ready to go. And people didn't know what to do with us. It's hard to file all this down into a very quick segment, but to cut a long story short, we were that band for a while, and it was a load of fun. And then Bobby Gillespie came to see us at a venue, and we knew he was there with Douglas Hart because we were friends with Douglas Hart. He'd taken us out to Istanbul to play a show for him at a gallery, and so Douglas had brought Bobby along. And he stopped us on the stairs after the gig, like the stage is in disarray, feedback going mad. Our bassist just ran across the bar, top off. It was mayhem. Jay Jagger was there. Kate Moss was there. It was balmy. So we were that band. We were genuinely the hottest band on the planet, because London was the coolest city in the world at the time. It was really kicking off. It was like everyone was coming to London. It was like, I know it'll be New York, and then it'll be London, it'll be Paris, then it'll be Berlin. But London was the hottest band in the world at the time. It was the hottest city in the world. And we were the hottest band. We were on for 6 months. We were the coolest band in the world. I'm telling you that now. Everyone was after us. We're getting offers all over the place. And Bobby Gillespie said, loved it. It was amazing. You need to write choruses. So we holed up for 6 months, and we did the whole Guns N' Roses thing of, Axl always used to say, if you write a chorus, make that the middle and go and write a bigger chorus. We were all big fans of Appetite for Destruction. So we did that. We holed up for 6 months and made Wild in Wildlife, which was produced by Zlaya Hadzic, who produced Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and Sonic Youth and Tortoise, all these great bands. So sonically, it's insanely good, but it's this massive gothic, like Sisters of Mercy and their pomp, enormous, ridiculous songs, but like just speed rock and roll, like Exterminator era, Primal Scream, Jesus and Mary Chain, Sisters of Mercy, Killing Joke, Simple Minds synthesizers, like New Gold Dream era, like just this enormous, great big thing. And then we took off and got, we were having talks with record labels, but every time we sat with a label, they were just like, we wouldn't know what to do with you. Like, because they were giving bands like 40 grand to sign a record deal that we knew. But that's for 2 years living in London. You got to make a record with that and live off it. You're not allowed to get a job. Right. So we turned them down. We just weren't bothered. But we did really, really well in Germany. Germans loved us. We did well in France. Out to Japan twice, played some great festivals, did some headline shows, South Africa, all over Europe, supported the Sisters of Mercy across their European tour, Killing Joke, New Order, Red Lorry Yellow, all these great bands, great bands that we loved. They loved us, and we were playing with them everywhere. We made great friends and had this great time. And then we recorded The Bleach Room, the second album, which is my favorite album, actually. But at that time, the lads, we had to get jobs. Wife got pregnant. All that sort of life started getting in the way. And yeah, so second time in Japan, we were just kind of like, yeah, we're not doing this again. I'm not coming back home without 3 or 4 grand in my pocket. It just is. It's not a jolly up anymore. I can't go away just to forward the name of the band for a week across Europe, across Germany, and come home having broken even. And we've been doing it for 10 years now. So we're not doing that anymore. So we stepped back from that and kept writing. We're still mates. And I've written a new Ulterior album, and we're making that with Aid Fenton, the guy who credited for Big Forest fan, but is credited for turning Gary Newman into Nine Inch Nails, essentially.
Yeah.
So Aid's a good mate of mine. He he released our first single, actually, Weapons, which was good of him. So we're making that with Aid Fenton. And I do I do my own stuff. So I do all the indie stuff with the upper body. And I've got a band, funnily enough, to link in with the Ulterior thing. At the back end of the Sisters of Mercy tour, came off tour. My wife used to sell for Paul Smith. She was out selling. Was selling season, and I came back. And the 3 weeks we'd had, I was rattling. I was sat on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m, just like the worst emotional, physical come down from. I mean, we nearly died on that tour. That tour is a whole podcast series within itself. It was insane. And I don't know why, but I wrote 10 sets of lyrics, words. I didn't know whether they were songs or what. Didn't know what they were. It wasn't like me to write poetry, but they just fell out of me. Didn't know what they were. They were the opposite to Ulterior, I'll tell you that much. It was gentle. It was beautiful. It was, it was a side of me I hadn't really gone into in terms of writing anything. I think it was just, I was trying to give myself the antidote to what I'd just been doing for 3 weeks. And I gave that to a friend of mine who's a pianist after about 2 years. Anyway, over the course of 10 years, about a month ago, I released that album that was written. And it's this lovely little sort of midway between sort of Skeleton Tree by Nick Cave, Nico's Desert Shore, Vars, No One Dances Quite Like My Brothers. Just this little dark, beautiful, crooned, sort of Scott Walker-y Tilt era, dark little oddity, this strange little album that happened over the course of 10 years, just putting it together in different studios and enjoying it. And lads would go off. Like our pianist went and played in Parisian hotel bars for a year and came back, and we continued. But anyway, that came out recently. It's called Violence. The album's called Amour, and the band's called Violence, spelled like silence, if you want to check it out. But yeah, it's a beautiful little thing. I dedicated that to my wife, putting up with me for this long, but it's about her, really. So that's where I am musically. So that's from really Merc being not ready to Ulterior being a proper band. And you can go and listen to Ulterior, and I don't care whether you like it or not. You hear a band that means it, that is on it, that is not fucking about. Who a band who are cooking. And you watch any live Ulterior as well. That's a rabbit hole to go down, because there's all kinds kicking off. It's brilliant, loads of fun. Violence is me singing, and it's more an artistic side to what I want to do. And the upper body is just the Britpop footballer as a character fronting a band, and it's deliberately both heartfelt in terms of it being a working class lad, knowing where I've come from, but it's also understanding how daft it is. So it's funny, but in a pulp way, in a knowing way, rather than like, it's not comedy, but it's self-depreciating, but it's cool, and the references are all great, and we don't even think about references. We just we'll be halfway through a track and go, this sounds like XTC, or like, this sounds like a Lost Squeeze track, or this sounds like Gene Genie by Bowie. That we haven't even tried to write or copy anything. It's just so all our influences are flying out, and there's so much joy in that band and listening to that band, because you just hear freedom. I don't care if it's cool or not. Like, you're getting a massive indie chorus. I don't care if you think it's cool or not. I'm not bothered. Couldn't care less. You're getting it. And that's what that band is. So yeah, that's where I'm at. That's about me up till now, where I've been talking to you for 2 hours and I've still not had anything to eat all day. No, I was at my brother's over from because my brother was in Ulterior, but my brother's over. He lives in LA.
Yeah.
So my brother's over with his son for a while. So we've been with them this morning, going for a walk.
And when you were playing, Paul, alongside being a Premier League footballer, how did that work logistically in terms of when you were playing? I did read that Frank Clark was quite supportive of your music.
He really was. Yeah, as long as I was there on time. I convinced him that I wasn't. He knew me, so he knew I wasn't out getting bladdered all the time. A load of the lads were like in the Black Orchid nightclub getting smashed, like just doing footballer things in the 90s. I was in rehearsal rooms. We might have a beer, but more often than not, it was just about hanging out and making tunes and playing gigs. We were getting driven down there, doing the shows, having to get driven back. I remember the first time I did Soccer AM. I chartered a private jet to get back. And asked the club if I could land a helicopter on the training ground. And you imagine like Stuart Pearce watching me get out a helicopter to come and train. But that was the heady world I was in at the time. Yeah. You have to remember, like, that was starting to go like that, even though we didn't believe in it as a band. But we went to see Paul Weller at V Festival, and we all got a limo down. Dyche was in there, actually, and Stoney and Woney, all the boys.
Yeah.
I was at Forest with him. And we all got picked up and we went down. And when we were all chatting, and when we got out, I'd done a photo shoot a couple of weeks before, and I'd forgotten who it was for, but it was for the NME. And it was the back cover of the NME. And it was a big picture close up of my face with shades on. And it said, "Is this the coolest footballer in Britain?" Well, when we got out at V92, I think it was the Weller one. It was the one where Noel joined him on stage. These were like 100-foot flagpole posters. So I'm getting out this limo, and I'm like, the boys are like, "Look at that load of look." I was like, "Oh my God." I felt amazing. It was so like, I wasn't Liam, but I felt like Liam at the time. Do you know what I mean? It felt brilliant. Such a buzz.
I've seen Sean Dyche was at Glastonbury, and I know he likes his music as well. But who in the dressing room was a fan of similar to music to yourself? Was there anybody in there?
Everyone came round to it. I mean, everyone's a little bit older. So you've got Chet's, who loves madness. Pierce, he was into all his post-punk and his Pistols and everything. He's a big fan of Stiff Little Fingers and Spear of Destiny and stuff. Like Cam's, Bartman, bless Bartman, by the way. Yeah. Desi, they were all into sort of like, Cam's liked his like hardcore, not hardcore. He liked his hip hop. He loved Biggie. He loved Biggie and Tupac. I remember Desi was into, this is like our little corner. Desi was sort of into like R&B and stuff, modern R&B. So was Bart. Jason Lee was into like sort of, he'd always play sort of like quite hardcore ragga stuff, which I loved, which I fell in love with. He got me into that sort of stuff. Hoops was, I think he was getting there with the indie stuff. But when I was introducing a lot of that, because I was coming to them with bands that were like pre-Britpop, you know what I mean? And then Oasis hit, and then everyone was just mad into it. And Blur and all that hit, and we were going to see the Sheds, who we all go and see these. They're like, I go to see the Sheds with Mark Crosley to this day. Still good mates with Rick, yeah, and the lads there. So that's good. But we had a dressing room tape, and track one on that tape, because Piercy loved it, was Merc's demo of "I Want to Be Your Dog," because it just sounded brilliant. It genuinely was just, I don't think I've created a recording that captured so much youthful energy in my life. It was just like tape recorder on, and it just was in the right place for the drums to sound great and the guitar to sound, we just hit it perfectly. So that was on there with everyone threw a track on it. It was the most bizarre mixtape of all time. But yeah, it was weird because the 90s sort of pulled everybody, everyone then started, the Beastie Boys happened, so we were all into hip hop as well as, ordinarily it'd been the black lads like this and the white lads like that, but it all just clashed really beautifully. So that mixtape was almost like this great little world of like, not different cultures, because they're English lads, like we're English lads, like the white lads are English lads, and like, but it was like hip hop hit, acid house hit, rock and roll hit, and it all just went boom in one place.
I read as well, Paul, that you went. Some of the Forest lads went to see Oasis at Maine Road. Or came
We did,
after
yeah.
after a game.
Well, we got battered by Man United, and Frank Clough told everyone that we weren't going. We were like, so I think I'd organised the tickets through Andy Copping, and we got all VIP'd up and everything, and we were absolutely broken. But I think we'd been beat 5-0 by United, and we hadn't turned up. And that's when United were really starting to do that as well, because ordinarily, we were competing with Man United. Like, when I scored on my home debut, it was 1-1. Cantona scored theirs. So we were competing with them, but they were just taking off. We got smashed 5-0. Frank Clark said it wasn't happening, but we did go. He let us in the end. Piercy had a word with him.
And when you were at gigs, would people come up to you to talk about music as well as football? Is that what you were known for? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been my life, and that's been the blessing of it, really. Like I say, I didn't have the greatest career in either of them, but I don't think there's anybody that could say that I didn't play top level football and I didn't perform at top level in terms of, we play in front of 4,000 people touring Europe, night in, night out on some tours, and people were singing the songs back to us, and buying albums, and we were getting taken all over the world. I did it properly in both of them, and who can say they've done that? To that degree.
Yeah, and you retired as a player quite young in relative terms. Do you think having the other passion in music helped that transition?
Massively, yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember the time. I remember sitting my dad down it was in the working men's club, the Victory Club in Beeston, where we live. I used to go to with my dad. I sat him down and told him. And I thought he was going to be heartbroken, but he was sound. He got it. Like, Northampton had broken me, and I wasn't interested. The band had started to do well. Do you know what I mean? So, I was just like, this now feels like the brave choice. Can I see myself playing Premier League again? I got offered to go and play at Grimsby, Hull. And I just thought, who wants to go and live in Grimsby, man? Like, I'm just not interested. I'm playing shows I'm playing like to 300-400 kids in warehouses in London. Like, that seems like the sensible choice, as daft as that may sound now. Am I going to get back to the Premier League? Probably not. I could have done, I could have gone to Hull and they'd gone up, and how it works. You get it, it happens, doesn't it? And in retrospect now, it happens. And I think I was good enough that I could have gone back to it. I had the confidence, but I made the decision and told my dad, and I did it. And yeah, 28 was young, but 28's old in band's terms. So I had this sort of at the Devil's Crossroad.
Yeah. Just finally, Paul, to end, whenever we have a musical guest on, we do ask for a few songs that they sort of relate to football. Sort of, if you have like an away day playlist, have you got any songs that come to mind that you think need to be on there?
When you dropped me a text and asked me, you said something about them relating to football. So what I actually done, because I was out walking with my brother, I've put 5 together that stand out, that puncture moments in my career within football from back then to today. So before Britpop, when Blur had first come out, because you're putting them on a Spotify, I was really into Blur and Suede really early on, because they were the flag bearers for Britpop. Blur first and foremost, so because I saw them first, and they had a track which is a B-side, I think, to There's No Other Way, called Mr. Briggs, which I loved. It's super early Blur, like pre-Leisure, but it's great. So Blur have just released a new album, which is brilliant. So to anybody that likes Blur, is into that might not have heard this is a track I used to listen to all the time, and I was getting my 3 buses to go and be a trainee at the City Ground. So that's a great track. Then when I was breaking into the first team and really starting to enjoy that Premier League footballer status and driving in, I had my own car then, like Billy Big Bollocks. The Verve's album, A Northern Soul, became everything to me. it was the album that, like, when my family were having a bit of a hard time, I'd go and sit, and it would put me in another world. In fact, still got the tattoo, Music Saves. That's from the album A Northern Soul. So that was always about, it was my world. That saves me. That's my world. That when anything, I've always got music. That's what that was to me. And the track, This Is Music, with the crescendo at the end of it, to this day, if I play that loud, the shiver up my spine is insane. It's just the greatest rush of all time to this day, because I can just see myself and feel myself crossing Trent Bridge, that beautiful sight. Not many better in football, crossing Trent Bridge and seeing the City ground next to the Trent, driving through thousands and thousands of people, knowing that I'm going to play on there in front of them all with This Is Music screaming because it's right next. And I was just getting that crescendo right, driving from my house. So that reminds me of that time. Then to go back and wrap it up neatly, ironically, with the Plymouth Argyle hat trick at Torquay. It was a great day. I remember being on the bus, sat outside, because we got there a little bit early, and it was sunshine just before all the rain hit. And I was listening to a track. I had the Asian Dub Foundation album on. I forget the name of it. And I had my cans on dead loud because I was getting ready for the match and we were about to get off. And it was called Tardeem, I think it's called. I wrote it down. Taadeem. I was listening to Tardeem by Asian Dub Fan. I remember all the lads. I remember turning around and hearing them all laughing their heads off because it's like Asian music, all these amazing like keys and harmonies, and it's a brilliant track. So I'm going to throw that on as well because many people won't have heard that, and it's a banger. I've put a little arrow in there because I'm going to give you 5 tracks. So I've got Blur, I've got The Verve there. I would be remiss to not put Oasis in because around that time of all the Britpop thing happening, it'd be silly not to have an Oasis track. And so I'll put Listen Up by Oasis in there because it's a criminally underrated track and it doesn't get played enough. So that's a wonderful song. So I'll put that in there. And then finally, to top it all off, I coach my daughter's team. And it's been a joy watching my daughter play football and watching her learn how to play, and stood on the touchline coaching them. I'm coaching them tonight, actually, but watching her play has been amazing. And when we drive to the games, she gets buzzed up by the Jerry Cinnamon album, the Bonnet. So she loves the track Dark Days. So I'll give you Dark Days by Jerry Cinnamon as the final track, because whenever I listen to that album now, it's my daughter playing football. So that's to wrap it up.
That is a great track list. Brilliant.
Yeah. Nice.
I know we've spoken for hours, but I could just stay here all night talking about football and music. But as I say, you've always, as you know, I had my Merlin Sticker album. You always stood out, but it wasn't to do with the football. It was because you were different and you were cool, and you know the passions that I grew up to like are similar. Because as you know, I was born in 1990, so I missed all that. But you know, I've got a friend who's seen Shed 7 about 80 times. Like, seeing them all over. Suede, Beautiful Ones. I know that's one of the mainstream hits, but just what a tune. And I think,
well, my wife came down the aisle to Wild Ones.
Oh, really? Yeah. Quality.
Yeah.
So although I missed it, and you know, I missed Nebworth, it's just.
But look at the generations now, like in love with Liam, kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the whole thing's happening again. Even watching Glastonbury, seeing like 19-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids. When someone starts, like, guitar solos have been, like, no one's been interested in hearing a guitar solo for 20 years. Now someone rips on a guitar, everyone's like, whoa. It's all coming back, isn't it? It's starting to see it. Young bands, young kids are watching it again and going, well, yeah, okay. Yeah. This is happening.
I mean, one of my heroes as well for Everton is Leighton Baines. And yeah, he's been one of our best players. He probably gets into our all-time team in history, but I love him as well because he liked his music. You know, he used to listen to Tame Impala, and I think he took his guitar on England duty. And, you know, I just don't think there's enough characters like yourself, Paul, in the game anymore. Yeah. And I think it's a shame. So
that's kind of you to say. Thank you.
Yeah. Really candid, really insightful. Loved it.
Nice one. It's been a pleasure, mate. I've enjoyed it. So thank you for having me.
No worries.
That's my pleasure.